Chelsea 1, Tottenham 2. The end. Friendlies are important. It's all about the fitness, but it's Chelsea. You always want to get one up on them. You want to get one up on everything. I can't stand them. Do you know what I mean? Now, does that mean that that result is going to take us on and we're going to go and finish above Chelsea and go and win stuff? 100% no. I'm a realist. But I don't like Chelsea. 2-1. 10 men. Nice. Richarlison. Poo. He's a player that I don't really want at Spurs, but cool. You got a Spurs shirt on and you score. Cool. Now, what I like to do is, speak in the game in its entirety. I've had my little bit of banter. Let's talk the realness. We've got two relatively new coaches coming into two of the biggest clubs in London. I'll not only do I want to see what De Zerbi was going to do in that first half, I want to see what Alonso did, because it's always the first half that's important to me in these friendlies, because they'll set out as they mean to go on, and then it'll get to the point where, regardless of what the result is, your big boys come off, your youngsters get the chance to come on and impress. If I go on the first half, Chelsea flattered to deceive, really. Cole Palmer, is he fit? Not too sure. Esteval, to be fair, looked lively, got his goal. But when I look at Chelsea, I thought, I did say to my son, you've got to be realistic in the fact that they've got four players that, if you put into that team, all of a sudden they look a lot better. You've got Reece James if he's fit, Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo, cool. I can't even think who the other person was. Morgan Rogers, that was one. So you look at the Chelsea and you think, they're not at full strength. But I look at our club, Tottenham, we weren't really at full strength either. You got Mickey van der Ven to come into that. You've got, I can't even remember who I was thinking of. Maddison, Xavi Simons, Pedro Porro and Spence. We didn't have a fit right back in this game. So there's arguments to say that both started off relatively strong, but we started as strong as our options allowed us to. And when you look at ours, we started off very well. One thing I enjoyed was the press. I've always looked at the squad that we've got and said, we're a squad that's built to press. So when Thomas Frank was trying to do us in two banks of four, along with Igor Tudor, it was never going to work because we haven't got them type of players. Ange had us on the full throttle, but it was too much. He didn't even focus on defending. We need a manager that's focused on both, which I feel that we've got in De Zerbi. If I want to shout out any people in that performance, Matthias Tell first half was, really took it to Chelsea. Solomon was decent. He's one of those where I think, do we keep him as a winger? I'm not too sure. He did all right for Leeds. We haven't really given him a chance, and I'm not too sure what De Zerbi feels, but if we're not going to go and strengthen in those wide positions, you might as well keep him. And he did all right in that first half, and he's done all right in a couple of the friendlies, to be fair, this season and seasons before. Tonali did well, got his goal. Fair enough, it was deflected, but he was there to put it away. Solanke was okay. I think if we're going to go towards a little bit of negativity, I think Van Hecke on the ball looked great. A little bit suspect when it comes to positionals, but I think that was him trying to understand his centre-back partner. Ben Davies, on the other hand, was arguably my man in the match. Andy Robertson looked a bit suspect, but one thing I will say to defend not just the Spurs players and the Chelsea players was the pitch. The pitch was horrible. I've played on pitches like that, in fields down the road, playing amateur football, and we're going to Australia where there's a crowd of 80,000 people, and you look like a tractor had run over it. So that's one thing that didn't make the game as good as it could have been. But first half told me that we still need to work on our defence. I know our defence was pretty much out. I think our first choice defence was probably out. You've got Pedro Porro, Spence, Van der Ven, and if Romero's still at the club, he's still the captain. So that's our back four all gone. And, the goal comes from a deflection. I can't blame Andy Robertson too tough for anticipating, because if that cross comes in as normal, Andy Robertson clears that. But then the deflection has caught him out, and Esteval's beat him at the back post. But apart from that, Chelsea didn't really do anything too tough in the first half. It was more in the second half when we started the game. Danso's come on for Van Hecke. I'm literally saying to my son, don't you think it's a bit mad that we've got 5 centre-halves and we don't know what we're going to do with him? As soon as I said that, Kevin Danso does what he does, gets sent off, and what I said was justified. That, you know, he's probably going to be looked at being on loan just because maybe he doesn't fit a De Zerbi criteria. But again, the pitch wasn't great. I don't think he was expecting that too tough. And then Chelsea started to put on a bit of pressure. You know, Chavski makes a couple of saves that I looked at and thought, I never thought he was capable of that. You know, Kingsley's come on leaps and bounds and he's obviously going to be our number one. And we kind of Chelsea did batter us for a good 20 minutes and didn't really take their chances. But then again, the game was stop-start. We had a lot of substitutions come on, which is natural. You know, we had a load of youngsters come on, so did Chelsea. And it kind of stemmed the flow of the game, which suited us, because then all of a sudden, Chelsea were on the ascendancy. Substitutions were being made. I think at one point there was about 12 substitutions being made at the same time, and that benefited us. We went 2 bags of 4, and all of a sudden we still were attacking. You know, Nicholas Tell took the torch of the attack for us and just kept going. I think he was brilliant today, regardless of it being a friendly or not. And then I think Chelsea just kind of were accepting of a draw. Literally said, you know what, don't worry about it, we'll draw and take it to penalties. Tottenham weren't having it. Jamie Donnelly's come on, took a shot, hit the post. Richarlison's come on, scored the winner. You know, celebrated with my son, and I thought, if you can bring that into the Premier League, brilliant. I'm not going to get too gassed. You know, it's a friendly. It's all about the fitness at the end of the day. But I've looked at us in the friendlies. I watched us against Sydney. You know, Tell did well there. You know, MK Dons was MK Dons. I watched the rerun of that. Fernandes scores a nice goal. But, you know, what I did like is that De Zerbi understands that we are a pressing team. We've got a team of athletes, and it makes sense for us to do that rather than sitting in the banks of 4. And that's what I want to see with Tottenham going forward. So, yeah, nice way to start your Saturday. I'll continue to talk about more friendlies. Keep an eye out and put the notifications on for me, because this season I've got a few shows coming on. So I've got a few people going to jump on my shows, focus on Tottenham solely. But then I've got a few surprises in terms of people joining me, and we're going to try and do a spin-off in terms of having all the big clubs, you know, your Chelsea's, Aston Villa's, Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal. And I want to do a show, not sure what day, and it's going to have a fan of each, and I'm just going to have banter the whole way through. It's going to be really good, and I think I've picked a group of people that, regardless of how everybody's season's going, it's going to be jokes, but at the same time, there's going to be some realness, because I'm going to pick 4, 5, 6 people that know their football like I do. So, yeah, watch this space, man. Hope you all have a blessed Saturday, blessed weekend, whatever you're doing with your kids, with your partners, all of that. God bless. See you in the next video. Jacob on the one up top. Love.